In a matter of weeks, Nigeria will be going to the polls again to elect another set of leaders. But of more importance to citizens is the economy. Well, Nigerians are trying to rebuild the economy through infrastructural development.
Into recession twice in the last 8 years, and with inflation on the rise, moribund refineries, poor infrastructure, and huge unemployment rates, the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, are warning that the federal government must urgently implement policies to prevent the nation from falling into a third recession. NASIMA notes that the declining trend in the nation's economic growth is worrisome. On the two occasions that the country is slid into recession, economists advise the country must spend its way out of recession by investing in infrastructural projects that will stimulate economic activities. But how the country can achieve this seems to be another challenge government is yet to tackle. With politics taking center stage and a new government set to emerge in less than 5 months, Nigerians are apprehensive of the impact this will have on the nation's economy.
Okay, joining us in the studios to look at this issue is the National President of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors, Olayemi Shonubi. A very warm good evening to you, and thanks for finding time to join us on Newsnight. I mean, you saw the background reports there. Infrastructural development is key to any nation's growth, and structurally. It's election season, and in just barely 3 weeks away or thereabout from now, Nigerians will be going to the poll to elect new leaders. Critical issues of this infrastructural development are not being raised. What are your concerns, as a member of the building society in this country?
Thank you very much, Christian, for inviting me to this program. Well, you have the report, the background has spoken for itself. How can we grow the economy? We need to have the right set of infrastructure. We need to put in place specific programs to reflate the economy. Yes, like you said, well, we're lucky. In other parts of the world, they are still in recession, but we have been able to get out of recession. And like the report rightly noted, the best way to get out of recession is to spend your way out of recession by making sure that the economy is reflated. And the easiest way that all over the world is to use the construction sector. And when you talk about construction, you are talking about expanding the level of your infrastructure development. The World Bank some years back has given the indication that Nigeria has a deficit of about $30 trillion, that in the next 30 years, even at the rate of spending about $30 billion per year for the next 30 years, it will be difficult for us to meet up. But how do we go out of it? How do we go around it? It is imperative. I wouldn't want to look at what the politicians are saying. Because right now, in order to win an election, anybody will say anything. I would rather want to wait until when the election is concluded, whoever wins, by the time he's sworn in, because let's be realistic, the outgoing government has its own policy direction. And that has informed the way the current budget that has been signed, the Appropriation Act, the way it was tabled. It is welfareist in nature, and that is why, despite what the private sector, headed by the NASIMA, the LCCI, have been saying about, look, what are we still doing with fuel subsidy? That the money spent on fuel subsidy could have been put in improving our infrastructure, so that when you do that, the manufacturing sector that needs this infrastructure to grow, particularly when you talk about power, when you talk about transport, they can expand their production capacity, and that will help the economy in whatever way. And yes, it's only the construction that all that can happen. I don't know whether that satisfies your question.
Yeah.
Well, you are really clear with your response there, but like you have mentioned, experts will say Nigeria has over 30 trillion deficit when it comes to infrastructure, but the APC-led administration will actually brag and tell you that, during the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration, we've seen, a huge difference with 8.9 trillion naira and counting really invested infrastructure in the country. But the question is, despite this high amount being spent on infrastructure, especially looking at this outgoing administration, some would argue that the money does not commiserate with the infrastructure on ground, maybe due to high pricing or maybe even corruption, because some of this money is siphoned elsewhere. So you, as the expert, price moderation, how can that really help with bridging that gap of the infrastructural deficits that we have in Nigeria?
Well, to answer your question, what I would say, somebody who has walked through the desert with a parched throat, by the time he sees drops of water, it can only go a little to give some relief. It's not like when you pour gallons and drums of water before the person can really feel relief. If you are talking about an infrastructure deficit of about $30 trillion, dollars, not naira, that are accumulated over the years, and then you think that can be solved in 8 years? Given what has happened, don't forget, we had a COVID period where globally nothing was happening. And that's why it is the effect of the COVID that is being felt globally now with the recession. Because with COVID, a lot of manufacturing companies closed down due to the restrictions by the various governments. Even in China, as we speak, the restrictions in China, in some parts of China, is still ongoing. And that's why even the Chinese economy right now is suffering some recession, even though a lot of people may not be aware. So the honest truth is that no matter what, a government can come, do the little bit that it can within the limits of whatever is available. And then another government comes and does its own bit. I will tell you something that has happened, which maybe a lot of people might not have taken notice of, and I keep saying that. Years back, I can't remember, I think it was in the first term, when a budget was presented at the National Assembly. And maybe the Ministry of Works was expecting about 500 billion to finish complete Lagos Ibadan Expressway, do Kano, Abuja, Kaduna, maybe do something on Niger Bridge, second Niger Bridge. The people at National Assembly felt that, look, we were elected by some people and they need to feel our impact here. And that rather than give one ministry that's big chunk, they would rather the money is reduced and that money shared amongst all the members of the National Assembly to do constituency projects. Now what that meant was that the Ministry of Works and some of those projects that are listed could not be completed within the time they are scheduled to be completed because the funds were not available. And that was what led to the creation of the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund, which was being managed by NSIE, Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority. And there's a World Bank document on that showcases that. And some of the loans that were raised, which are part of the issues that we have now, the Sukuk bond, were used to finance some of those projects. I can tell you for a fact that I know how Lagos Ibadan Expressway was about 4 or 5 years ago, and I know how it is now. I passed that road over Christmas. It took me about 1.5 hours from Lagos to Ibadan. In the years past, I could spend almost a whole day on that road, about 6 years ago. So,
great improvement there. I mean, from hindsight, but very quickly, what is your institute, for example, which is key and critical in the reflation of the economy through infrastructural developments that you said, will it be presenting a cardinal direction for the new leadership And two, you mentioned Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, or let's look at construction generally. Why are we not seeing more of local content? I love the Dangote adverts, talking about the Obajana highway and the rest, using local content material, cement. Why are we not seeing that in the construction of our highways? Quickly.
Well, the honest truth, if you ask me, when you are talking about highways, when you talk about all roads, highway, bridges, all the material used are local content. The only imported component there are the machineries. And you cannot talk about local content for machinery, for the equipment. You are talking about earth-moving equipment that will break rocks and all of that. We don't have companies here that manufacture them. Most of them are imported. And the mechanical aspect is the heaviest component in heavy and civil engineering projects, not the whatever. The quarry, they go to the quarry is here in Nigeria. They break the rocks there and convert them to granite stones. The cement, like you said, from Obajana, from Lafarge, from Dangote, from Boa, they are there. The sand is also laterite. They get them from nearby. So when you talk about, but it's when you now start talking about buildings, that is when you have a lot of imported components. And I've said in some other fora, and which I'll probably also say here, if we want to bring down cost of building, when you're talking about particularly affordable, it's about time government begin to encourage local production. The raw materials are here. You will be amazed. There are companies now that manufacture tiles that we go and import from China, from Dubai, from Spain. There are companies here now that can manufacture those tiles. All the government needs to do is to encourage more of those manufacturers. But how? Look at our power. And that's why, when I was talking, I said we need to improve on our power supply and, of course, our transport infrastructure. Because even when you have power and then to move the goods from one place to the other, it's not there. And then most importantly now also, which is now very critical, before it wasn't, was the issue of security. There has to be security on our roads. A situation where somebody is moving product from the south to the north and there is a fear that maybe the driver and the truck will be hijacked midway, and then we're talking about ransom. Of course, it does not go well. It will only continue to increase the costs because the logistic costs will increase.
Very salient points. And of course, one thing we're taking out of our conversation is the fact that, we have to look inwards to find solution to Nigerian problems. So that way, the money is being spent on infrastructural development actually is commensurate with, what we see on ground. We have to say thank you so much to you, Olayemi Shonubi, of course, the president of the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Surveyors. Thank you for joining us tonight on the program.